All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with Maddie B and Rick David. Sorry about that little bit of a delay. Facebook wasn't letting me connect for some reason, but we're going to jump right into it and go a little bit high tempo. My topic for this week is I want to congratulate our College Bowl Pick'em, and I'll probably read this wrong, but its name was Not As Bad a Pick as Trump, overall number one. Edging out our second place winner. I will say that I didn't do as bad as Matty B. Almost last. He barely beat out Adam Wainwright. But I'll let him speak for that. Matt, what are your thoughts on the Bull Pick'em this year?
Well, after a couple picks that I did not rank very correctly, it just tanked, and then I just quit paying attention to it, so I didn't even know where I ended up at.
That's what the best of all champions say.
Once I realized that I fell below 70%, I realized, well, I'm not winning, so I just shut it down.
Well, I will admit, once Michigan lost, I had no hope of getting back into it because I had them ranked number one, and that was such a disappointment, and that's the only way I can sum up that pick'em. But congrats to our winner. I'll be reaching out, trying to get a hold of you, send you a Southbound Sports t-shirt. We'll go around the horn now. Matt, what do you have? We'll keep up with you. What do you have for high tempo this week?
One of the things that I really liked from, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I liked the different perspectives that we were able to see from the college football playoff. The one that I really enjoyed the most was the coaches, the film room, where they had the 6 coaches that were there analyzing the game. To people maybe that aren't as obsessed with football, they may not have liked that or gotten like that's how in-depth some of those guys got into it. But I thought it was a unique perspective, getting current coaches to talk and see what they're seeing as the game was going on.
Yeah, I do like that. I think they were adding, we'll get into that in a second, a bunch of different numbers and stuff in the show. But Rick, what do you have for a high tempo this week?
Mine is the coaching carousel in the NFL. It's finally going around, so you're having a lot of jobs get hired. I still don't understand why Ohio coaches kept their jobs, but whatever. But John Gruden got his, and he was your big fish out there in the big pond. So, but I mean, that was something we were talking about a couple weeks ago, was the fact, who are your big name guys? And there really aren't. Outside Gruden, there wasn't a lot. So every other team's like taking secondary to third guys because your top guy went pretty quick and it was pretty obvious where he was going, and there was no conversation. It was like a done deal. But when you get $100 million to coach in the NFL, I think it's pretty tough not to take it. So I think you have to take it and run and pretty much be happy. And he'll be happy one day in Vegas. So he can use that for gambling money with the slots.
Well, I'll say that I'm a little surprised that John Gruden, he commanded that much attention. Is he the biggest name they have out there? His overall coaching win percentage is only .540. It's not like he's a world beater. Yeah, he won one Super Bowl. I mean, he's been traded and he's been fired. I'm surprised he went back to the Raiders. I mentioned it. I think originally everyone was saying that Tampa Bay was in play. I don't know why he would have went back to the team that fired him. Now he's going back to the team that traded him. It looks like they're luring him in with ownership, and maybe he knew all along that he was going to get this deal, and that's why he never really entertained the thought of going to the Tennessee Volunteers, because I know we joked about it on the show, and I brought it up a few weeks ago. And me and Rick had that little dinner bet, but overall, I heard Tennessee made the same offer of $10 million. So the only difference was going to be the ownership stake and the Raiders. So interesting that he went that route, because I would think that college coaching is a little bit more secure of just a job, and that's why I think a lot of the college guys haven't been making that jump into the pros lately. But we'll use that as a segue into the Steel City update. Penguins, I'll start with them, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Rick. Penguins right now, they're 5-5 their last 10 games. They just jumped the Hurricanes, who they lost 2 games to. One of them, I think, was a 4-0 beatdown. if I didn't block that out of my memory already. They're, fifth in the Metropolitan Division, 47 points. The leader only has 55, so like I said, this is such a close division that they could jump. Now, the last place has 46, so if the Penguins lose and a couple of these teams win, they could be in last place or get on a run here and jump to first place in the division. Rick, what are your thoughts on the Penguins right now?
As of today, I just looked again. They are in 8th place. So if the playoffs begin today, they're in 8th. But there are, as right now, 3 teams tied behind them at 46. That's Carolina, Philadelphia, and the Islanders, which aren't 3 half-bad teams right now the way they're playing. Penguins need something. The defense has looked awful. Tons of injuries like normal. Murray's not doing as well. There's not really that consistent play and everything. And right now, I jokingly said to another group of friends I have, I said, if I was giving out the MVP award today, it would go to Phil Kessel of all people. So, no Malkin, no Crosby, no Letang, no Murray. It'd be Phil Kessel leading the team in goals and points. Sad to say that, but that's the truth. So, second-tier star on this team is your MVP. That means the first star's got to step up, and the bottom, the third line has got to do something. So that's your other problem too. And your goalies have got to stop pucks too.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, does it come down to just as simple as they're worn out? They traded a bunch of key players or let a bunch of key guys go. I know it went against them too, losing the goalie in the expansion draft. And you just don't have that other level that you had to rely on to win some of these other close games when their starting line's not on, which is a product of them playing so deep in the playoffs. It's just tough to win games. So I would hate to see them limp into the playoffs only to be an early round exit. But we'll see what happens, because I still think they could turn it on. It just comes down to, do they have enough in the tank to make a deep run once again? For Steel City, the Pirates, nothing really on them that I have. Do you have anything, Rick?
Nothing really. It's the same old story with the Pirates. John Morosi was reporting last week that the Pirates would trade McCutchen this week. I don't think it's happening. It's already Tuesday. We're hearing nothing. So, the Garrett Cole rumor to Houston's out there. Houston wants a frontline starter. Pirates are going to ask for everything under the sun, your firstborn kid, your mansion that you have, your car, your boat, your second wife, and pretty much, some yard decorations. They're going to ask for everything under the sun. Like I said, I see them trading everybody at the deadline. I don't see anybody trading now because they need that media deal to get money. So I think you got to keep what you got to get the media deal to get your money to make some payments. So, and you want the best media deal because this is your last year of that contract with AT&T Sports.
And I know they didn't do anything to boost their roster really, but I would hate for them to be close like they were last July and then to make those deals and just suck the life out of all of Pittsburgh. But I have a feeling that's what's going to happen, but we'll see how spring training goes because that's going to be starting soon. And for the Steelers, they're playing the Jaguars on Sunday at 1, and we'll be chatting up the NFL playoffs here later in the show. But let's go ahead and jump into the national championship game. Matt spoke a little bit earlier on it about the different views that ESPN threw out there. I did have the television numbers. I know get into a little statistics and things. Overall, they said that with all of their channels, so ESPN, they started this thing called a megacast where they show it not only on ESPN, they show it on ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPNU, like all these other channels, and each channel has a different view. So I think they started to do this on the ESPN3 years ago, where they had a streaming-only Skycam view, kind of like the XFL. And now they have a coach's room and all kind of different views. But overall, if you add all of those together, they had a 16.7, I think, which accounts for, I have the number here,
one of the highest rated ones.
Well, see, that's what I wanted to bring up. So they had 28 million, almost 28.5 million. And I've seen reports that it was like the number or the second rated highest bowl game ever and things like that. That's not true. It's the second highest maybe on ESPN, but there's no way it beats the old Rose Bowls and things when they were on ABC, because cable network does not get as many viewers. And just to show, they were trying to say that it rose by 8. So this year had 28.5 million. We'll round that up for them. Last year had, it's either last year or the year before, 25 million. And then the year before, and these were the Alabama-Clemson games, 26 million. So I think it's just a product of being in a little bit bigger state, because those numbers are comparable, only a 2 million person jump. And just to give my comparison for this, the original one, Ohio State versus Oregon, had 34 million. That's a bigger jump, or actually a bigger drop from Ohio State, Oregon, and to the first playoff to this year's 28 million. That's like a 6 million people drop. Or you can go with 5.5 if you round up, and then to 28.5 to 26 a couple years ago. So I don't think the regional SEC only aspect of the game really hurt it as much. I just think that you went from playing in 2 states, Alabama and South Carolina, with Alabama, Clemson, that have 4 million, 5 million people, to adding in Georgia, which has 10 million people. You're able to just bump that up. But I think they'd probably be happy with these numbers. Other than that, I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on the game. Matt, anything you want to add football aspect-wise?
I was really, really surprised that coming out of halftime into the second half, that Saban pulls Jalen Hurts and puts in the freshman quarterback. If that move doesn't come up aces and Alabama doesn't win the national championship, he essentially paints himself into a corner that he has to leave. Like, he has to jump back to the NFL after that, because to have both of those quarterbacks that are as highly touted as they are on that level and on that stage, it would just be a nonstop second guess, no matter what he did the following season, of which quarterback he should be playing and which one he shouldn't. I was shocked that they were able to come through and finish the game out in overtime and get that win the way that they did, throwing the ball deep, because honestly, by halftime, I thought Georgia was going to run away with this. They were out physicaling Alabama. They were established a run game. I mean, you saw 2 coaches that definitely shared a similar overall philosophy, that were playing great defense. They were limiting deep opportunities, the big plays, and you know. I know there were people that I saw on Twitter that were saying it was a boring game, but I think those are people that just aren't used to watching that style of play.
Yeah, I'll admit, I didn't watch the game live. What I did was I followed on social media. I wanted to do something a little bit different to give it a different aspect. I know you watched the coach's view, but overall, I heard a lot of people saying they weren't going to watch. The numbers showed that the same amount of people basically watched as they always do. I don't think you can count the drop from the Ohio State-Oregon game. That's more of just a national game. That I think people were interested in the game. I'm surprised that it went to overtime and the numbers weren't a little bit higher. But people were saying, just based on social media and some of the highlights and stuff that people were posting, they were accusing it of being a boring game. So you're right there. I heard a lot of that. This game's boring. Not too much is going on. It seemed like it was kind of more of an NFL-style game. And maybe that goes back to where people were saying that the NFL ratings have dropped. I did have those numbers too. I sent them to you guys earlier in preparation for the show. But I think they said that the overall NFL drop, just the playoffs last week, fell 11.5% compared to the playoffs from last year. And if you look at the numbers altogether, the rating was a 20-something. I sent those numbers, but I don't see it here, which is better than the actual college football. But maybe college football, people are getting used to the spread offenses that you don't see in the NFL and you don't see in this game here. Yeah, Matt, you said about the higher-ranking quarterbacks for Alabama. Those are spread quarterbacks that he recruited. I don't think Nick Saban can actually coach that style of quarterback, because if you remember, he had trouble with that all the way back to LSU with Jamarcus Russell. He really didn't know how to use them. And you can go back, what game was that? The Iowa-LSU game, 2005, Iowa ended up beating Nick Saban on a Hail Mary because LSU got behind. Nick Saban did the same exact thing. He threw in Jamarcus Russell. He changed the quarterback. So he has a history of doing this now. Not granted, I forget what that was, like an Orange Outback Bowl or something. It wasn't on the national championship stage, but he's made that quarterback switch to the young, unproven guy. And I think what that does is you're putting in a guy that number one, they didn't have tape on, and he's a left-handed quarterback. I think Hurts is right-handed. So you're flipping the field. Everything you prepared for, and I know you're a coach, Matt, so you can back me up on this. Everything you prepared for all week, everything you're gonna be facing the right-handed quarterback. You're putting in a rookie. You don't have any film on him. They're able to go ahead, reverse play calls, everything else. So all those tendencies just from watching film and practicing it all week. Okay, well, most of the time he's gonna roll out to the right. Let me just shift a little bit out here. I'm going to drift as a linebacker. Now you're seeing that same thing. Safety shifts over. He drifts that way where a right-handed quarterback could make that throw, the game winner, and the left-handed quarterback drops it right in. Perfect. Wide open. And I think that's where you see that. You're facing another guy you don't have film on. You didn't prepare for that, and it just got him out of sorts. Rick, I'd like to get your thoughts on the game. What did you think?
I watched the actual game and I thought it was boring as heck. So it just seemed like it was going nowhere in a hurry. It was figuring out who had a better punter at one point. I mean, it just seemed like they couldn't connect on passes. A lot of drop passes. I know the Georgia, Wims had like 3 drops in the first quarter or something along those lines. I mean, it just looked kind of sloppy and everything. So that's why it just was bad all around. I think for people overall for the NFL and for college, you would actually rather see it go to halftime be 21-21 or 28-21 or 24-21, not 3-3. Because I started feeling tired at halftime, and lucky enough we switched to Kendrick Lamar lip sync crap fest, whatever the hell that was. That was awful. I'd rather watch like nothing. But I mean, I think that was the problem. So, and I think a lot of people turned it off on the Kendrick Lamar, never put it back on. And I think here's the weird thing with TV ratings. You can actually get counted a couple different ways too. So if you're watching coaches at one point in the first quarter and you switch to the second, Corey, you're doing something else and doing something, you can get counted like 3 different ways because you're watching it 3 different ways. So I don't believe the ESPN numbers. I think they're made up because I think you can get counted different ways. So maybe I'll watch the first part of the game or do this. You can get double and triple counted. So
I don't know. I'll post these on Twitter. I know I say I do that for a lot of stuff and I get lost in the shuffle. I'll try to do it after the show. But I think the overall, it depends if they add streaming numbers in. Because you're right. I've had trouble with ESPN connecting all year. And it was never like that because Matt can vouch because we used to come over to my apartment like, 5 years ago, 6 years ago in North Carolina, and we would have like 7 games on ESPN3 on 2 different TVs because they let you stack the 4 games. And we would sit there and take notes and come up with like our own theories, coaching, who's doing what, why that team sucks, and all kind of stuff. Now, if I tried to do that, my stream would just be stopped. And so every time my stream shuts off, I have to refresh. I know that viewer ticker is just counting, which surprises me when they put these numbers out. They're like, well, we had 200,000 viewers, only 200,000. I had to refresh that stream like 100 goddamn times. So how many times like people are there really watching? So excuse me, I don't know. The numbers. You really can't. I mean, there's not really. You have to kind of get a body of work. This is a new thing. I think what's going to happen, though, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Rick, since you weren't here last week. UCF, undefeated champions. And I have some numbers here because it's going to get into.
Hold on real quick before you get into any of that stuff. One of the things that I thought with the national championship game, too, that changed the way the outcome of that game was the fact that some of the officiating was very slanted towards Alabama in the second, especially in the second half. There were some cheaper plays that, had Alabama gotten penalized, definitely could have reshaped the focus of the game. There are a couple of plays where like there's defenders from Alabama like blatantly pushing Fromm's head down. The one player was like getting into a fight with an assistant coach on the sidelines for punching a guy on a special teams play. There are a couple other things that like just little things that if the referees penalize Alabama for it, it makes field goal opportunities a lot stronger. It takes away scoring opportunities and potentially change the outcome of that game in favor of the Tide.
And I agree with Matt.
Go ahead,
if
Rick.
you some of the, it happened in the pro game because Titans got some calls in their game and they won. And then this game you had Alabama. They totally just missed calls and they won. I mean, you have an NFL official retiring because he did such a horrible job. And now in Alabama, we had the Big Ten crew, so you had my great grandfather get out there on his crew. They're still used to 1940s football where it's run with the fullback, run with the halfback, back to the fullback, back to the halfback runs. So I mean, the Big Ten crew, I don't know what they were watching. They must have been waiting for Larry the Dr. Pepper guy to show up. Make sure they got their Dr. Peppers. I don't know. They totally missed some calls. Totally. And there's no excuse for most of the ones.
Yeah, I'll say that watching basically just going through the stats and watching how the game unfolded that way and what people were saying on social media, there were a lot of complaints about the officiating. And I saw one was like a blatant face mask, I'm pretty sure wasn't called. And that's just if people were tweeting that they weren't called. I'm not 100% sure if they were or not. But you have that going through, and it did look like you're reaching the point where, is this fake? Are they throwing out these calls just to keep the game close? They don't care who wins. But at that point, it was 20-7? It looked like Georgia was going to run away with the game. I know that's when Alabama started to do their freshman shift. It wasn't just the freshman quarterback. He put in a freshman wide receiver and a freshman running back that I think started to tear him up. And if you think about it, these are probably freshmen that Georgia had no film on, like I said, and they were practicing all year on the practice squad together. So they had that chemistry that normally if you just throw in a freshman quarterback, they don't have the chemistry with the first-round guys. But by having a bunch of five-star guys on your bench, like the number one running back recruit is a freshman, the number one wide receiver, or they didn't get the number one, Michigan got him. But let's say like a number 2 or 3, I don't know which top receiver they got. They definitely got one of them. You put them all in the game, and they've been practicing together. Georgia has no answer because they don't know what they've been running scout team-wise. And actually, it's probably like a bit of a doppelganger. They just got done playing Clemson. Those guys probably had all kind of little Clemson wrinkles that they had been practicing pretending to be them the week before. You throw him out there, you're like, what did he have to lose, Matt? He throws him out there and says, go wild.
I agree. And also, this is just smart coaching that he does it in the second half. He doesn't put him in the second quarter. He doesn't do it at the end of the first quarter. He does it after halftime. So Kirby Smart and his assistant coaches don't have time during halftime to sit together and strategize, what are we going to do for this new quarterback? If he puts him in the second quarter, not that the halftime gives them a ton of time, but it gives all of the coaches downtime to figure out what their plan's going to be. Doing it in the middle of the third quarter or at the start of the third quarter puts the Georgia staff on their heels because now on the fly they're having to adjust to a new quarterback. And not just that, but what are the tendencies? Because it wasn't like he was seeing consistent reps all year.
Do you think it was planned, though, in a way? Because I thought about this, though. They won the coin toss, and Alabama deferred and said, we'll take the ball. So I often thought, did they have this already planned out as a series starting the second half? We're going to go with him just maybe for a series and see what the heck happens, and then continue on and go from there because they don't have anything. They're going to try something different. So if they're losing, they go with the backup quarterback. But if they're winning, they're going to give it a different shot just to figure out what the heck's up.
I don't think that it was planned, but I think it's happened too much to Nick Saban where his team, if you think of like the old LSU game where it was like 6-3 or whatever, where a good defense can shut his offense down. And I don't think he had anything really going with Jalen Hurts. And that was the whole narrative leading up to the game. Can he redeem himself? I think Nick Saban saw last year that he couldn't get it done. And he was like, what the hell? I have this great guy. I know he has some chemistry. Let's put him in for a series, see if it works. And then they got some yards, whatever. I know he took some bad hits and stuff just because he had those freshman mistakes. But at that point, what do you have to lose? You're going down 20-7 or whatever I said it was. He might have even led that touchdown. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
I pretty much agree with a lot of the stuff that you were saying. I don't think that it's necessarily something that they go out and directly game plan for, but I think it's something that you keep in the back of your mind of over the course of the game, what's your plan as a running quarterback, Jalen Hurts? What do you do if he goes down? And you better have a game plan that for something as vital as your starting quarterback. You better have a plan B in the event that he goes down. And I think the styles of the two, where Tui was more of a passing quarterback, where Hurts was more mobile and on the run, you got to make sure that you have at least something built into your game plan that week so that if something happens, you have a plan B that you can go to and kind of tailor the things that you don't necessarily throw out your scheme, but you set it up so that if your backup goes in, you know what they can do well, what they can't, and within the scope of your offense, still be able to produce an effective offense that tailors around what he can or can't do.
Yeah, and I would add on to that people that aren't coaching or just anything more than casual fans, I would argue that a good coach already has a series of plays for their backup that they script just in case, like Matt said, he goes down. And even in today's game, you have the concussion hit where you leave the field for a series or two. You almost have to have a series for that backup quarterback that they practice all the time, that they can go in and they're comfortable executing, whether it's a freshman or a senior backup. You have to have that series. And I think that might have been what he went with. Let's see what he can do here. We can have our coordinator, our other quarterback, whoever, offensive coordinator, talk to Jalen Hurts and get something else planned if it doesn't go well. And then they just went with it. So I don't know, Matt, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they might have had that series scripted all along just in case Hurts went down and they knew that it would probably work against Georgia?
I'm sure that was probably something that he did. I mean, with the level of detail, you don't win that many national championships by sheer luck. I think that you have to at least have a couple plays that you think, what are you comfortable with? Like, I know if a starting quarterback that I was coaching went down, I would make sure that you have at least a small handful of base plays that your backup quarterback has run either at the JV level or even coming up through the system from junior high, that they have an understanding of at least a couple base plays so that if they have to get thrown in, you're not just going to completely stall out and just kind of give games away.
Yeah, I mean, we can go ahead and move on to his legacy now. When you're talking about Nick Saban and what he's done with like the national championships, looking back through his thing, he definitely makes adjustments. I know there's going to be some push this week to see if other people think that he's the greatest coach ever. So before I get into my take, we'll start with you, Rick. What's your take on Nick Saban? Do you think he's the greatest coach ever?
Wow, good question. I don't know. You would say yes in a way, because when the Bear Bryant era there wasn't that many good college teams. There were a couple. There was that handful. But now there's so many places that a college kid could go and play. Wow. I'm going to go with... Yeah. That's true segregation in a way, too, back in the Bear Bryant days, too. I don't know. I would say yes of this era, maybe not at all time, but yes of this era. I would say easily since 2000, easily the best. Maybe even the 90s. I'll even say you throw the 90s in there, too. Because that means Bowden and Paterno, has he done more? Yeah, he's won more championships than both of those two. Both of those two combined, actually, maybe even. Yeah.
Was that a dig at Florida State there, Rick?
No, because I'm thinking you add two legendary coaches up, you still don't get his national championship. So it's more of a math equation more than anything. And then, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to say yeah, because, well, you could, I mean, even if you throw in other people, they only have one or two. They don't have many. So he has many.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
It's tough to say no. And I'm sure you have the stats to prove me otherwise. But when you look at what he's done, he did it at LSU. He's done it at Alabama. He's done it with spread-style teams. He did it with pro-style teams. And in an era where we're living with kids that want instant gratification, he's been able to continuously produce top talent and top caliber programs and teams that there's not another program in college football that you question. Could you take this team and put them in the NFL and have them play teams, and how would they do facing an NFL schedule? You know, to have that level of success and to do it with coordinators constantly moving on to other positions. I think if you don't, I would be hard pressed to find who you would say would be a better fit. You know, my knee jerk reaction is to say yes, but I'm sure given some time, there are other coaches who could probably be in the argument for that. But just the volume of national championships to win on an elite level, the way that he has, and with the style of play from different coordinators, different people. It's not like he has his assistant coaches have stayed with him and he's constantly like having continuity at an administrative level. He's the main cog while assistants come and go that continuously produces a good product.
Yeah, and I'm going to look at this from kind of like a statistics point of view. And I knew I had this coming in, so I texted you guys beforehand that I had some stuff. I didn't tell them what it was going to be. But I'm looking at the list of like winningest coaches of all time. And actually, it's a good point that you brought up. I'll be Bowden and Joe Paterno. Both of them, I think, were right around what Nick Saban has winning percentage-wise. I'm not 100% sure because, of course, with the vacation of wins or whatever, they're not officially listed, which is so bullshit when you think of like how nothing happened to the North Carolina Tar Heels in basketball. Give the guys their wins back, because as a stats guy, I want to see all the numbers. I don't care if you think that they cheated a year when you really don't have proof, because what was the Florida State thing? They had like a tutor or something extra. Come on, you had decades of fake classes at North Carolina. Take away all their wins, or don't take away from a coach. That's bullshit. So I will say that kind of pisses me off when I'm looking at the list here and I want to see. And by far, just as a comparison, Urban Meyer's winning percentage as a head coach is 851. That's ridiculous. Nick Saban, he's way down the list. He's only won 778. So that's almost a 100-point swing in favor of Urban Meyer. And I think what people are looking at is they're looking at only national championships with Nick Saban, because Nick Saban has failed a couple stops. He failed in the NFL. So if you're thinking, okay, is he the greatest coach, you immediately have to go ahead and put that qualifier in that is he the greatest college coach, because he didn't even win a division in the NFL. And then I'm going to take this a step further, and I'm looking down through. As Nick Saban is a head coach, even though he has all those championships to his resume, he's only had one undefeated season. One. And I text this to you guys beforehand. He has the same number of undefeated championships in his career as Michigan has had in the same exact time. Michigan has had one undefeated in 1997. So if I'm looking at that from that perspective, yeah, has he won national championships? Yes. Are these actual national championships? I don't know, because you're lucking out this year. Didn't win the division, didn't win a conference, but yet he gets to claim a national championship. So to me, I think when you're comparing him historically to these other coaches, the one coach that he lines up very, very similar to is actually Bo Schembechler. They are only points apart in winning percentage. So if I'm looking at this list, and they're well down, they're not even in the top, I would say maybe 30 of coaches, but Bo Schembechler 7.75 and Nick Saban's 7.78. The difference being Schembechler wasn't named national champion whenever he had all his one-loss years that Nick Saban had. So if you had a 4-team playoff back in the 70s, would he be on the same level as Nick Saban? Because Nick Saban's had the chance with the playoffs and the conference championship playing game that you didn't have in the 70s. You didn't have in the 80s. How many other coaches would have been able to use that as a stepping stone? Even Bear Bryant himself. How many times looking back was he 1 or 2 games away and they were out of it? You didn't get that second chance. And Nick Saban, hell of a coach. He's taking advantage of it. But I think when you're looking at it, you have to look at that perspective. Because Bo Schembechler had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons in almost a row where he was undefeated or had one loss. And were they named national champions? No. Because it was basically a popularity contest. If they had even a 2-team playoff or a conference championship game to get him to that next step, Nick Saban has that. So very similar there. I think it's going to be able to, you're going to have to wait to play it out, because I honestly think if Urban Meyer stays coach, I think he picks up 3 more national championships. Because Nick Saban has to retire. He's 66 years old. Urban Meyer's only, 52? I mean, no one else is recruiting as good as him. He's right below Alabama right now. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Go ahead, Matt.
One of the things that you said was with Urban Meyer's winning percentage, and I think one of the things that you kind of get skewed when you look at that is a lot of those wins when he was at Florida was in the toilet side of the SEC. So yeah, he did win national championships at Florida, but it wasn't like it was on the competitive side. I think it's the West is just absolutely atrocious. Where the side where Alabama's at, you're dealing with LSU, they're dealing with Auburn, they're playing the more competitive side of the SEC. And when you're having to play, teams that are within the recent championship years that are being ranked in the top 25, top 10, and you're having to face 3 and 4 top 10 matchups a year, as opposed to people that are scheduling, a bunch of nobodies for their non-conference games or Division II or FCS schools. I think that does have an effect. So yeah, it's easy when you're playing, the Vanderbilts and the Missouris that you're going to have, it's going to prop up your win total then, as opposed to, playing the Les Miles coached LSU teams when he was competing for national championships. So I think that it shows. I think the truer indicator of Meyer's success has been more recently, because he's been losing games in the Big Ten that he should be blowing teams out.
Yeah, and I could play a devil's advocate on myself here. Looking at Urban Meyer, too, he's only had 2 undefeated seasons. 2012, Ohio State was on probation from the Jim Tressel era, so they didn't compete in a national championship. Could they retroactively go back and claim that, like some schools? Possibly, who knows? And then in 2004 at Utah, same scenario as UCF this year, which we'll circle back to that in a second, but I'd like to get your thoughts, Rick. What do you think about Saban's win totals and stuff?
I kind of agree with Matt in a way. It's just the way you interpret it and everything. And the thing is, when you play certain opponents, you always know when you play the Big Ten, you're going to have to face all these top teams to go in. You're going to have to. You got Penn State, Ohio State, you got Michigan State, who are consistently pretty good teams every year. And the problem is, during when Bobby Bowden and Paterno, and even Nebraska's years when Tom Osborne was there wasn't the 14 playoff. So they could have got lucky one of those years when they were maybe a 1 or 2 loss team, and then got lucky like Saban did this year, coming out of the 4 spot and winning it. So, I mean, I agree with you there definitely. And just imagine what some of these other national champions would be and everything. And I mean, the 2 years Paterno won the national championship, they were undefeated. So, and there was a year where they were undefeated but didn't play in the national championship game for some reason. I can't remember the exact ruling, but there was a year where they didn't play in that game. So just imagine they would have technically been undefeated and could have played in these roles now they're in.
Yeah, and I'm looking through. I have the Bo Schembechler thing up. There was 5 years he finished ranked in the top 4. That right off the bat, would probably be in a 14 playoff. Some other ones you mentioned, Joe Paterno early, the 1994 season. They can't claim that because I think we talked about this on the week of the show last week or the week before, Matt. I think they have to have an accredited body name them national championship, and no one picked them that year. So I don't even think they can go back through and name that season, even though they were undefeated. And to contrast that, UCF this year, it's looking like one of those bodies, I forget the newspaper, is it Peter Wolf's publication or something? NCAA recognizes that as a national champion selector. And
CM stands for.
Yeah, so one of the papers...
Whatever CM paper stands for.
Yeah, so one of the papers is going to pick UCF for the national champion, and they have had their parade, and according to the NCAA rules, they are considered, I told Matt, I think when I researched this originally a few weeks ago, that they're considered consensus national champions in the eyes of the NCAA, and there's nothing anyone can do. And one thing that made me laugh so hard was how pissed off everybody was getting. Because the comments are ridiculous. It's the first thing everyone ever sees. Like, the NCAA was promoting. I don't even know who the halftime was, but I had to hear that stupid halftime commercial about 100 times over the NFL weekend because ESPN was promoting it so hard. And the first comment that I would see on Twitter was always like, UCF is already the champion. And it made me laugh so hard that everyone would just go crazy every time it was mentioned. Like there can't be another champion. It's been this way forever. If you're not going to include all of the conferences, it can't be a national champion. I think everyone's been saying that since they announced the 14 playoff. I wasn't excited when they announced the 14 playoff. Were you guys? I mean,
I was, just because I thought it was an upgrade over the system that they had, and the other part to that is that until this year, the system had worked itself out just fine. Had Auburn gone in and blew UCF out of the water, we wouldn't be having this debate. It would have just been that lower tier school went undefeated and they got curb stomped, and they didn't deserve to be in. But because they beat Auburn, who beat both Alabama and Georgia, and beat Auburn in regulation, where Auburn and Georgia had to go to overtime to decide their game, there's that glimmer of doubt that could UCF have played with either one of those teams? Would their style match up? It's easy to say, no, Alabama would crush them, but the same people thought that Auburn would get crushed by Alabama and they didn't, and that Auburn would crush UCF and it didn't happen. So it's easy to say, oh, this would have happened, that would have happened, but the fact of the matter is, unless you either expand the playoffs or you allow these people that you did what you needed to do, you won all your games, you get the reward for it. And I congratulate UCF for being willing to not only acknowledge that it was a national champion, but also pay out those assistant coaches the bonuses for winning the national championship. Yes. I thought that was a very smart move, and that was a very appreciative thing to do, to take care of the assistant coaches, to make that a more attractive place for coaches to be willing to go there.
Yeah, I wanted to give them a shout out for that too, because that's a great move. Pay the guys, because then it legitimizes everything you're doing. You can't fake it and go halfway, because that was the thing. I've been sending stuff out on Southbound Sports. Follow us on Twitter, S-Bound Sports, and Instagram, Southbound Sports. I put a good thing about Brian Kelly up today. He's always yelling, even in his Wikipedia picture. They have a picture of old Notre Dame Brian Kelly flipping out, so that's funny. So follow us on there. And I have some numbers here, Matt. Actually, those non-Power Fives in these New Year's Six playoff games or whatever, they are right now sitting with a 3-1 record. So it's not like they don't deserve it. They're winning. Almost every time they're in the playoffs or these big games, they are winning. The lone loss is Western Michigan, which if you remember, that was the Wisconsin game. I think it was like, wasn't it like 17-16 or something crazy? Like it was a very close game. I could be wrong on that, but that was the one where, was it the Cotton Bowl? Let's see if I can find it quick as I'm talking. But if you're having these teams come in every year and they're winning, you can't tell me they don't deserve to be there, because these teams should be blowing them out. You know what teams have been blown out? When I think of a blowout, I think of that West Virginia Clemson bowl game. I think, was West Virginia still in the Big East, or they had just joined the Big 12, and everyone said they didn't belong. And they went out and they crushed Georgia the one year when Rich Rod left, and then they destroyed Clemson. It was like 77 to something. That's what I think of like when you say blowout. That's what these games should be. If you don't want UCF to be in the playoffs, blow them out. But they haven't been doing it. Anything you guys want to add, Rick? You want to add on that? I know you weren't high on the UCF thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking up what CM stood for and the computers and everything. It's the Cooley matrix. So it's this guy who pretty much made this computer system matrix to print out the best thing. So I've been reading about it here. Apparently, UCF had 3 top 25 wins and 5 top 50 wins, which gave them the highest ranking, which is a point like 98 overall, which actually beats Alabama's 4 top 25 and 7 top 50. But again, they have that loss figured in, which is like a subtraction out of it. So that only gives them like a 97 ranking. So that's how they won on this computer system this guy made. So,
and I will say, with that computer, I think that was one of the ones used in the BCS. So it's actually an NCAA recognized. I think the NCAA gave him some guidelines to put in there. And if you remember the BCS computers, if you had a loss, it would knock you down a whole point. I think that's part of like what the NCAA wanted back in the day. And I will add on there, I looked at the numbers and I tried to crunch them myself. I think if Georgia would have won, they might have jumped UCF for that top spot, which is ironic that the NCAA would be having some questionable calls in Alabama's favor. If they wanted to squash all these things, they could easily have had Georgia win. They had the lead. They jump them in the computers, and then UCF can't claim that national championship. But now, boom, they're stuck with it. It's going to be in the NCAA record books. I think it's. I feel bad for the Boise State fans, the TCU fans of like 2010, the Utah fans from back in the day, teams that have gone on undefeated, won that big bowl game, and now they're shut out. But then you get to watch UCF claim that championship. That has to suck. I don't know how that feels, but it has to feel bad. Matt, what are your thoughts?
In addition to, I saw that Tulane was claiming the 2000, I think 8, or it was the early 2000s. They had an undefeated year. They're claiming that as a national championship as well now, since UCF has started this, that they were going to go back and claim one of their national championships. So why not just claim every year? Why? There's nothing stopping you.
Well, like I was going to add this in, and these are some good numbers. I'll try to bring them in and show them next show. But I wanted to see why teams don't claim these undefeated years, because I just curiously I looked it up because Wikipedia has a list of them. Michigan right now, I know that's my school. Of course, I'm going to use them as an example. They claim 11 national championships. They have 12 additional undefeated years. So if they would go through and claim all those undefeated seasons, why don't they? If these other schools are going to do it, because let me see if I can bring it up real quick. I'm pretty sure they have it. So just as like an undefeated, I would say undefeated back in the day, that's more of an indicator of strength than like a bunch of writers from the Associated Press, newspapers, like saying that they went and watched their team and they think they're really good. To me, I don't care who you play. If you go undefeated, because there haven't been that many undefeated seasons, I think you should be able to claim it. NCAA doesn't have a full tournament. Go back through and claim it. And I don't even care if you were on probation. That's even better. If you're on probation, like Ohio State was, and you go undefeated, claim it. And I hate Ohio State, but I think they should claim that championship. I know they weren't involved and it might be disputed or whatever, but claim it. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I kind of zoned out for a minute there. Wasn't paying attention. I was trying to look something else up.
Rick, what are your thoughts on the undefeated seasons?
I mean, I'm looking at one right now. TCU in 2010 had an undefeated season.
I was right. I claimed it.
One right there. I mean, I can't remember who all they played in that 2010 season, but I know they steamrolled a lot of teams.
Okay,
and blew them out.
Well, here's a good example.
They could claim it.
Wikipedia, I found the thing. Perfect seasons. Alabama has only had 10 perfect seasons. How many undefeated or how many championships does ESPN run on that commercial? Alabama has like 16, 18 national championships. They've only had 10 undefeated seasons. Why can't these schools claim undefeated championships? If Alabama's going to claim, God who knows how many, that one year, 1973, is awful. Alabama claims a national championship. They lost to Notre Dame. The true national championship that year in the bowl game. They played them. And even worse is 1941. Look this one up. I'm pretty sure I sent this out. Alabama finished 4th in the SEC, and they claim a national championship. The AP ranked them 20th. They had like 4 losses. It was embarrassing. It's embarrassing that they even print that. So if Alabama, of all schools, and their fans, I don't give a shit if they come at me. If your school claims 1941 as a national championship, you can't be mad at UCF. You can't be. You should be embarrassed that you claim that as a national championship because there was a ton of schools that were undefeated that year. And the fact that you print it in your thing, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So you can't knock UCF. And I know Paul Feinbaum or Pete Feinbaum, whatever that guy's name is, he came on there and he was all mad and he was saying like, oh, you need to be classier than that. You need to be classier. I'm going to read you the standings. 1941, Alabama went 9-2. They finished 3rd. Mississippi State was ranked 16th. They're the highest team in the SEC. They won the SEC that year. Tennessee finished number 18. They were 8-2. They finished 2nd in the SEC. In the AP poll, Alabama finished ranked 20th at 9-2. 2 losses. And then you have the national championship that year, the national champion, number 1 Minnesota, 8-0. They also have number 5, a Michigan school, 6-1. If Alabama could claim that at 9-2, why can't Michigan? Add that to our thing. Utah, undefeated. Let's see who else. Duke, ranked number 2, 9-1. Also better than Alabama. And Alabama still claims that. To me, that is more embarrassing than what UCF is doing this year. So go ahead, Alabama fans, get mad because UCF deserves to win. You only have 10 undefeated seasons in your school history. Not that good. Not that good. When Princeton and Yale have more than you, you're not the best school. Go ahead, Matt.
But there's that other piece to it that if you can just claim random ones, it also takes out some of the bias of if the popularity contest that existed before the current playoff system or even the BCS era, where at least there was some kind of organized system that took it out of the hands of people that I like this team or I went to school here and I want them to push my team into a higher place. It would just be like me just voting Florida State as the national champion this year just because I like Florida State. Even though they had a garbage year, I want them to have that national recognition, so I'm going to put them in. Well, if you get enough morons like that are going to do that, like people were doing that. There's people that are still voting. Like, you look at that 41 year as an example. There's people that are voting these teams that you have no reason to vote someone legitimately number 1. Like, try to be as unbiased as you can. Don't be a homer. And for those people that are, it's like, well, just claim them all then. Everyone gets it.
Yeah, and you look at certain years. You look at 1950. There's 4 teams that are national champions. 1951, 5 teams are claiming that. I mean, there's so many ridiculous ones. I mean, 57, there's 5 national champions. What is this? This is like, it reminds me of AYSO soccer. Everybody's a champion. I mean, you showed up, you put your uniform on, champions. Congratulations. Here's a trophy and a medal. Go show that to James Harrison.
Well, Matt,
there's 6 in 1960. 6? What the heck?
Well, I'm looking through the list here, and I'm glad you brought up the vote because people Ohio State fans, I'll put that in there, make fun of Michigan for not winning that 1997 coaches poll. Philip Fulmer voted Michigan 4th at his coaches poll, and apparently a couple other teams voted us 4th. There were 2 undefeated teams that year. Why the hell were they 4th? Like, you can't give me that. So that's a legit poll in the eyes of the NCAA, but the Coley matrix is not. What's the difference? If it's a computer, you know you're not getting bullshit like Phil Fulmer's vote. And then he came on and he was like, I wasn't mad that Peyton Manning didn't win the Heisman. Yeah, I'm sure you weren't. But I'm going through the list here. So undefeated. Just claim perfect championships. If you don't have a perfect season and it's 1941 Alabama, erase it from your record book. That's an embarrassment. So if you go by perfect seasons, because to me, that's a national champion. I don't care. Penn State has 8 perfect seasons. Why do they only have, 3 national championships? Claim 1994. Like, what is the difference if they claim it or Nebraska claims it? Who does that hurt? That doesn't hurt anyone. And then people make fun of Pitt, which is why I brought this up. I know Pittsburgh-based and everything. I shouldn't be making fun of them. But Pitt claims how many championships? Like 9 or something like that. They've only had 6 perfect seasons. Penn State has had 8. Why is Pittsburgh claiming these weird national championships? They have the poster right in Heinz Field. I've seen it when I go to Steeler games. It's right there. It's like in the end zone, I think. I could be wrong. I don't think they wheeled it out for only Penn State games or Pitt games. But, I mean, you have the perfect seasons. Use that as a marker. Oklahoma has 11 perfect seasons right now. They're ahead of Alabama. They're 3rd of the big schools. Notre Dame has 13 and Michigan has 15. Then you still have the Yale at 16 and Princeton at 18. Those are the perfect seasons. If you're going back through, that means no ties. I know they had ties. If you get cut out some ties, then there's even a bigger gap between Michigan and Notre Dame and the rest of the schools. Michigan has 23 with ties. Notre Dame has 22 with ties. The next would be Oklahoma at 13. So to me, perfect season. Ties can get it weird because some schools have had records where they've had 3 or 4 ties in a season. To me, that's not really national championship worthy. But I mean, like Texas. People say Texas don't have that many national championships, but they have 9 perfect seasons. Go back through and claim them. That's my theory on that. I'll end on that. I know we're going super long, so we'll jump right into the NFL playoffs now. Steelers, I'm actually not too worried about them this weekend. I think things are going to finally click, and that's just because Blake Bortles, dude, he looked awful. What the hell? He couldn't even hit. That was a home game. Yeah, I could see if it was in Buffalo, but my God, like, how can you be that bad? People were like on Twitter, because I've been watching. I didn't just watch the national championship game. I did watch the NFL games. I didn't watch the national championship game, but I followed on Twitter as well. That's what gave me the idea for the national championship game, to follow the stats close and just watch by that and try to give my perspective. But dude, that game, the Bills and Jaguars. What an awful game. No wonder the ratings are down. Who would want to watch that? And then I'll give my thoughts real quick, and then I'll let you guys finish up the show. The Saints-Panthers, I don't know what the Panthers were doing, man. They were driving. I thought for sure they were going to come and win. Just run some plays down the field. Like, try to get some short passes. McCaffrey's tearing them up. He just broke a long touchdown run. Get him on a little dig route across the middle, try to pick up some yards. Instead, Cam Newton's half rolling out and getting an intentional grounding called on him. Like, come on. If you want to be a champion, Cam, you have to make better plays than that. And then he's arguing with the refs. Instead of getting plays called, he's messing with the refs, saying that he was out of the thing. Get your team in huddle and call the next play. Quit wasting time and try to win the game. I think his immaturity cost him that game. Because he was driving. Instead, he gets in that weird situation. He gets the intentional grounding. He starts arguing and calling. Then he misses the blitz pickup. And that guy sacks him way back in like the 50-yard line. And they have no chance of winning that game. The other ones, dude, the Andy Reid meltdown. I tweeted that out during the game. Like, oh, it's about time for an Andy Reid meltdown. Because it was like, 6-20 or something like that. And it happened. I didn't think it was actually going to happen. I thought, should I send this? Because Andy Reid, the Chiefs are probably going to win. They're too good at ball control. But it was like, what are you doing? Hold the ball, run the clock out. Do teams not do that anymore? It's like, we have to try to like throw deep. We have to try to catch them off guard. It never works. Didn't work on the Super Bowl. Didn't work for the Chiefs. And what was the other game? Oh, the Falcons, man. We said they were going to turn it on the playoffs. Looks like they did. And that's pretty much it for me this week. I know I got on a couple rants against Nick Saban in Alabama and against Andy Reid. Did Andy Reid? I know we joke and have the Andy Reid award of teams that for fantasy teams that just do awful in the playoffs. And it's just true. It hurts. Like, that has to hurt his legacy. But I'll go around. Rick, we'll start with you. Any thoughts on the NFL playoffs?
Pretty much a lot of the same exact thoughts you had. I mean, not surprised. One thing it did show me is you can beat the Falcons easily. Just make them pass, because it just makes sure you have Blake Bortles in the pocket. I mean, everybody kept saying it's Patriots Steelers. It's going to happen. That's why you don't watch AFC, because it's too top heavy. I mean, do I think Tennessee's going to win? Hell no. Do I think Jacksonville's going to win? Hell no. So AFC's already done. NFC, I mean, at least you have some better games in the NFC. That's about the only thing I will say is you have chances where there could be either team could win. I know Eagle fans are saying we're still not going to figure out a way to win, and you may not, because you got Falcons, who are still a pretty good team and have lots of offensive weapons. Here's what I think. Falcons can use their weapons. Carolina has no idea how to use their weapons correctly. They use them, then it's like, we're not going to play McCaffrey anymore. Well, we'll leave him out. The one guy who's doing really good. And I think Minnesota's going to handle New Orleans. I think that their offense is still good, and then, I mean, that'll be a good thing. And Case Keenum's going to build up his name for a possible trade, or do you trade Bridgewater? I think you trade Bridgewater at this point for next season. So, I mean, and keep Keenum. So, but I think it's going to be Minnesota, Pittsburgh, New England, and I'm going to take Atlanta in the upset. So I just don't have any faith in the Eagles right now.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was really surprised that there was no scoring in that Buffalo game, for as bad as I thought you were going to see a little bit more offense out of that. But I think going into this week, the matchup with Brown possibly being back from his leg injury, he may try to play on, and I think if he's not at 100%, it'll be an interesting matchup to see him and Jalen Ramsey, because Jalen Ramsey played very well versus Calvin Benjamin. And as a bigger physical receiver, I thought that it was an intriguing matchup, and I think being able to see if Brown's not 100%, to see how well he's going to be able to perform against a tough Jacksonville defense. I think the possibilities there for another low-scoring game, and it should be a more high-scoring weekend of games, opposed to what we saw this past weekend. It was kind of like watching paint dry. The one storyline, though, that I do want to kind of see is I want to see how do the New England Patriots come out and play, because with the ESPN article that came out about the rift between Kraft and Brady and Belichick, I want to see how are they able to keep it together for their playoff run, or does this begin to be the start of whatever? Because right now, I think it's tough to say who the main pivot point is. You could have the argument that it was Kraft for keeping Belichick on board and allowing him to run his system. You'd say that it's Brady that's basically being handed the ball during the game and just say, call it, run, operate your no-huddle offense. So I want to just see, how do they maintain? They're saying that there's no issues or there's no friction, but let's see how it plays out on the field.
Rick, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's ESPN gossip trying to sell something because they're garbage and they have nothing else to sell. And they're probably talking about Oprah Winfrey running for president currently now. That's probably will be around the horn, and Max Kellerman's Cry Fest, and Stephen A. Smith. I don't understand anything because he uses big words incorrectly in sentences. I'm not even an English major, I can tell. But yeah, I just think it's a made-up story. I don't believe it. I mean, they wouldn't have the championships. They wouldn't have the Super Bowls. Does it make sense to trade Garoppolo? No. But they're smart enough. They probably already see something out there in the draft that nobody else is seeing. Who was Jimmy Garoppolo in college? I can't even tell you where he went to college, but they found him and they drafted him and they made him good. So I just think they have another plan in mind. It was like when they took the 2 tight ends, Gronkowski and Hernandez. Nobody else was thinking double tight ends at that point, downfield options, and they abused teams for those 2 or 3 years that those 2 guys were together. So, I mean, I think there's another line of thinking that we don't see. So,
yeah, I think it's made up too. I don't know what ESPN's doing. I saw some of their highlights they put out of the college football playoffs, which weren't really highlights of the game. They were highlights of their personalities cheering for the game. Like who is that for? Who's going to search and be like, I wonder what my favorite ESPN personality cheered for during that play. And then you sit there and watch him jump up from a couch while another guy sitting on the couch putting his head down. Like I see that might be cool if they're like coaches, like the coaches room, but they're not. They don't know what they're doing. Half of them, I guarantee, probably didn't really even play sports. Some of the ones that are on there, like the ones you named, Rick, what's the point of that? And I think that if the Patriots get rid of Brady or push him out because they want to keep Belichick, that's the dumbest move. It's as bad as Harrison leaving the Steelers. I did see someone had his jersey tied to the back of their car and they've been driving through Pittsburgh. So keep an eye out for that if you're down in the Berg, because that's what would happen. If you push Brady out, it's going to be worse than the Joe Montana thing where Joe Montana ruined his legacy going to the Chiefs. I don't know. I can't remember if that was his decision or not. Don't do it to Brady.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I think they traded him, right?
Yeah.
So, like, the 49ers, that's probably why they ended up cursed. I mean, I guess they did win the Super Bowl right after that. But
because they had Steve Young.
Steve Young was awesome. I love Steve Young until he got Aeneas Williams. Was that Williams that hit him in the head?
Yeah.
Like, killed him. No, man, I feel so bad. That's what I think of when I think of concussions. Also, what game? But Cam Newton clearly had a concussion in that game, didn't he? Did you guys watch that? He was on the ground and was having a seizure. And then I thought, well, Panthers are done. Here comes Derek Anderson. Cam Newton comes back in, misses a couple wide open receivers because he clearly had a concussion. But
he said he was poked in the eye.
I know, but come on. He got like a clear shot to the head. I don't know how they let that go. I mean, I know it's the playoffs. They're like, holy shit, what do we do? Tell everyone you got poked in the eye. And then, like, that's what he did. I saw him, like, clutching it around. I don't know. It looked bad. But
isn't there a rule against anti-seizures now? If you get a seizure, you're done, like the Tom Savage rule? And they let him play. I'm like, I don't understand the NFL thinking. Like, okay, we'll let him play. We're good.
They need the superstars. Brady. Tom Savage, they were like, Tom Savage, you're not a superstar. Why the hell did you put him back in the game? Cam Newton, they're like, Cam Newton, pretend that's an eye poke. Get out there. We need you out there. But I'll end on that for the week. We'll be getting back into it. Steelers, go Steelers. I got some stuff. I'm ready. I'm ready for them to play the Jaguars. I watched some footage of Antonio Brown. This is what I do with my free time. I watched some footage of Antonio Brown running routes out in the field. He looked like he was good. So I'm thinking that 100%, team's going to be 100%. And Blake Bortles is going to be, what was his accuracy? 7%? So if that holds, should be a blowout for the good guys. So I'm hoping for that. You guys have anything to end on, Matt?
Yeah, I want to send some love to Mike Gundy, the big mullet at Oklahoma State. They showed in the coach's room the touchdown pass in overtime to end the game, and he is just stone cold emotionless. They like pan to him, and like other people are like having a little bit of emotion, and he just like someone just kicked his dog. He just looks just so pissed off. It was awesome. So if you have a chance to go to see that clip, it's worth a view.
Rick, what are you ended on this week?
I'm going to have two things. I want to give a shout out to Kerry Collins, my brother's good buddy up at Penn State. So he's now in the College Football Hall of Fame. I just imagine what would his career have been if in college and in the pros if he would have stayed a little bit sober and didn't battle sobriety issues a lot. So wish the best for him and congratulations to him. I know Kajana and a bunch of other guys, McDuffie, were all congratulating him. So I mean, it was great. And I want to congratulate the city of Cleveland, too. I want to say thank you and thousands for showing up for the parade for the 0-16 team. I know people took shots at that, but I think it's fair.
I think it's funny.
If your team sucks, you deserve to honor it. Because the thing is, the people are purchasing money. The people think they have a right, and they do have a right. They got the permits. They did it. I know the players weren't happy, but I'm sorry. It's the other side. People are tired of teams stinking while other teams have success year in and year out. The thinking is with the Cleveland, they could be the Steelers. Heck, Cincinnati, every about 5 years put together a good one or 2 year team, then they fall off the bridge. And the Ravens are always good there. Why can't the Browns be? And the problem is because their front office is a bunch of jabronis. They have no idea what an offense is, and they hire some offensive coordinator nobody's ever heard of as their head coach. And I mean, literally, I had the idea. Me and my two buddies were out on Friday night. Said, heck, we could have been like try coaches, and we could have led a team to 0-16 in the NFL. True story, we could have. We could have pre-gamed it and been great. Had some Madden skills and tried our best. That's the problem. So I'm proud of the Cleveland Browns fans who are actually showing up because they didn't during most of the season either. So kudos to them.
Rick, that started off with a lot of name dropping by you on the Kerry Collins thing, and you followed up with the Browns. I'm surprised parades are even a thing still. Who the hell goes to a parade? Yeah, that's what I want to do. It's like
the
zero.
Penguins fans come out millions.
It's
for
like
theirs.
0 degrees out. It was below freezing, and they're having a goddamn parade. Get out of here with that.
You got to give them credit, though. You got to give them credit. They cared about the 0-16 season. Yeah. Hey, Hugh Jackson says they wouldn't be 1-15. Yeah, he was right. They went 0-16. Congrats. I mean, Hugh Jackson knows what he's talking about, apparently.
So bad.
And on a sad note, too, I know I mentioned this before. Today would have been Dick Edinburgh's 83rd birthday if he would have still been alive today. So sad day that he didn't get at least to get 83. So still my favorite announcer of all time.
All right, well, we'll end on a more positive note for the Hall of Fame. Charles Woodson also got in Best Defensive Football Player of all time. He won a Heisman, a Super Bowl, a Defensive Player of the Year. What else did he win, Rick? A national championship. Naming all these awards.
You gave him like awards he didn't even win.
Rick, you sent me that screenshot. It was longer than my phone of all the things that he won. I had to scroll through that.
All those participation trophies.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, national champion. That's all I care about.
Did you get the 6th grade spelling bee contest runner-up? Did you get that one or no? No? Okay.
No, I think it was a Heisman or a Heisman. He's not in those commercials now. Did you see Barry Sanders in that commercial? So bad. It was like Barry Sanders knows how to... I forget. I've tried to block it out. He was dancing or something. I was like, come on, Barry. You had to leave the Lions for this. You remember you retired early. What'd you do with your money? But we'll end on that. Follow us on Twitter. Facebook Live at 9 p.m. every Tuesday is our show. Jeff does Spaces or Laces on Thursday. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.